Shadows Literary License Podcast episodes. Ben Stokes here, exploring all things Collinsport, Maine, and following the likes of the Collins family and the friends and foes with your co-hosts Tom Diamond, Jesse Fultz, Vicky Ray, and Keith Chalgo. Collins family, story about blood relations, literally.
Hello, welcome to Literary License Podcast, and today it's Dark Shadows Day, and we're discussing episodes 419 to 439. And to find out who's with us, let's find out. It's Vicky Ray. Hello, Vicky.
Hi, everyone.
Tom Diamond.
Hello, everybody. And that sound you hear in the background, we're torturing people in the backyard. So
I don't hear anything.
I do, but that's okay. So that's just for all you guys and gals out there who wonder what we do while we're taping. We're usually pouring boiling oil on people. No problem.
And we have Jesse Fultz.
Hey, how's it going?
And myself, Keith Shago. And before we get started, let's find out what we've been up to. So, Jesse, what have you been up to since last week?
Hear the scream? Somebody just screamed. Good.
It's terrifying. Yeah, we have lots of things going on, I guess. I'm just working on my website and holiday decorations and stuff like that, I guess. Yeah, I've been building.
And what about
yeah, and I've also been watching The Crown.
Like that's what
I've been watching The Crown. I know, it's weird. What the heck?
A couple of my patients are actually in The Crown, so
It's good.
I haven't actually watched it.
A couple of us have been crowned, so there you go.
So, well, most of us have been crowned when we were birthed. So anyway. So, Vix, what have you been up to?
Not a whole lot. Just getting ready for the descent into madness of COVID and the Christmas season. Had Thanksgiving with the kids yesterday. Not a whole lot. Just watching my usual stuff. I'm still watching Eli Roth's History of Horror. Can't stop watching it. It's awesome. I've learned a lot of stuff and found some cool movies that I had no idea existed out there.
Nice.
Yeah, and I've started watching Becoming Evil because I have to have my dose of serial killer kind of stuff going on. And other than that, I've been watching The Crown. I'm totally addicted as well. Don't know why. It's just well done.
What season are you on?
I have to give Netflix kudos for this one because if I like it, and for such what would be a normal, boring subject to Americans, to have you so invested in all of the characters and how they're perceived and represented, they're doing a fabulous job. But just getting ready for the holidays. We've been baking and eating way too much, and I'm probably needing to go to the gym a little more often this week. So. Other than that, we're cool.
What about yourself, Tom? What have you been up to?
So,
Just watching The Crown.
well, I was, well, of course, what else? Also breech births, depending upon what happens. But yeah, I'm on the second season, the beginning of the second season of The Crown, and it's really fantastic. I
mean, I
think Lithgow as Churchill is great, and
fantastic.
I was just mentioning before we started, the gal who plays Queen Elizabeth sounds just like Julie Andrews. I
think so. I think she really does a good Elizabeth, though. But the older actors comes on.
She does a good.
She does.
Of
oh
course,
my gosh,
was
right down
very
to the
frightfully. That kind of thing. I learned some new British expressions and so forth.
What is this wave? The wave, the royal wave.
They wave that way because it takes less energy, and that way your arm doesn't get tired. Because you have to remember you're doing that way for like 45 minutes at a time.
Well, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
And it's circular.
And the gal who plays Margaret always having fun with Philip Townsend. You kind of want they jump on each other every chance they get. It's no, very, very well done. Actually, for some crazy reason, I started watching HD reruns of the old Time Tunnel series from the 1960s with James Darren and Robert Cobert. Robert Colbert, not to be confused with Robert Cobert of Dark Shadows, but Robert Colbert, and Whit Bissell as the general, and Lee Merriweather as Anne. Oh my God, it was a great. That really should have lasted more than one season. 30 episodes. Tony and Doug for all the people that remember back then when you'd watch on Friday nights the Green Hornet, and then you'd see the Time Tunnel on Friday nights at 8:00 after the Green Hornet at 7:30, and it was Irwin Allen did a great job. Why that thing? I've heard rumors as to why that didn't make it to the second season. There was just some political nonsense. They were all set to go, and at the wrap-up party, they were told there wouldn't be a second season. That's how bad it was in terms of that. But really lovely show. Also, Boardwalk Empire, which I'm just about at the end of, which is an HBO of the 1920s and Capone and the kind of updated Untouchables thing. Very, very, also very, very well done and very engaging. And school is coming along, and life is good. That's where we are.
Excellent. Why you, Keith?
Myself, on Amazon Prime, I watched a show called The Pack, which is a game show where they take 12 people and their dogs and they go around the world.
I was going to watch that. I was, and I turned it
It's really
off.
good. I really enjoyed it. You get a history lesson for everywhere where you go. Cool. The winner gets $500,000, and then they get an additional $250,000 to give to the charity of their choice.
Oh, it is good. I thought it was. Is it an actual show, or is it?
It's an actual show.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I started watching it when I got home on Wednesday, and I continued onwards until the very end that same night. So yeah, and I was tired for work the next day, of course, because of that. And yes, we too started watching The Crown, but we only watched 3 episodes. So that's as far as I got. And we probably will continue with that, something to watch. And then also setting stuff up for the podcast. For listeners out there, we got the cast and crew from Anna and the Apocalypse joining us, and that will be out next month. And besides, and then we also getting Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz, who wrote Little Shop of Horrors, Wicked, Godspell, so on and so forth, because they did a musical Hunchback of Notre Dame, which will be opening on Broadway next year. So we're doing a special episode with them as well for our Hunchback of Notre Dame for January.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Organizing that. But besides that, going to work, we're at the last week of our lockdown again, and then we're going to Tier 2, which I'm still, no one knows what that's about. But just tell you how messed up things are in England is that in order to increase social distancing among public transport here in London, what they're going to do now is they're going to have less trains, and make sure that you buy your ticket. Make sure you buy your ticket now, because unfortunately there'll be less trains. It's like, why would you have less trains? Yeah. How's that going to promote social distancing? That just means more people shoved together on a train and shoved together in a bus.
Probably the worst idea in the history of bad ideas. They want to do that in New York City too.
It almost sounds like Japanese.
Yeah, 450,000 people could lose their jobs because of how is this good?
I know.
I don't get people, man. That's crazy. Everybody's going to be rushing to the subways, to the trains, to get to work. And then we're going to have the bubonic plague on our hands at that point.
Everybody's in 6s and 7s over it.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, that's what's going on here. So, yeah. So we're just as messed up as the rest of the country.
The holiday season in London. Anything good going on?
The holiday season here, what are we doing? Well, we can now socialize with people outside of our pod, so we'll be able to do that during Christmas, but only for the 4 days. So I guess COVID's going to go on holiday for those 4 days, and then
sort of like you get. It's sort of like If you get drunk, you're going to get COVID.
Will Santa be wearing a mask when he delivers his gifts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all that cross infection as he goes from chimney to chimney.
That's right. Be wearing PPEs, you know. That'd be fun.
Santa don't have time
red
for
and
all
white
that
PPE.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, so we'll see what's going on. I mean, everyone I'm working with shielding at the moment, so it might be good to see them again. But and then I guess they're going to start making us work from home more. So that's pretty much
That's where things are going now in many industries, and especially in America. You know, a lot of the federal agencies in America are now considering and practically going to telecommuting permanently. So this has Zoom is doing very well. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So I mean that's what we're going to be doing, and we're moving our offices around. So we're my department's homeless at the moment. So basically, I'll probably go to work on Monday, and I'll be sitting out in the parking lot because they have nowhere to access. They're making everything. They're turning everything into COVID at the moment, even though we only had 3 patients. Yay! So on that note, let's talk about Dark Shadows. But first, we're going to cut to Out of the Shadows, about bloopers and strange going-ons with the filming of Dark Shadows, brought to you by Tom Diamond. And then we'll be cutting to the synopsis, which will tell you what was been going on during episodes 419 and 439. We'll be right back.
Hello, everybody. Tom Diamond here regarding Dark Shadows episodes 419 to 439, stars and bloopers. And I hope you guys, by the way, are having a happy Thanksgiving. And good to be with you to get right into the stars in this episode block. First one you should know about is Jane Draper, otherwise Jane Sloan Draper, who played Suki Forbes, the wife of Nathan Forbes. And she didn't have too many episodes. She appeared in episodes 419, 420, 423, and 424. And not in this block, but she's going to be in one more episode after we get back from 1795, and we'll talk about that at the proper time. So Jane Sloan Draper was born March 29th, 1946 in Indianapolis, Indiana. She has a rather famous lineage, I should say. Now, her father was an insurance claims manager and her mother was a housewife. However, her great-grandfather, Andrew Sloan Draper, was president of the University of Illinois, and he was also the first New York State Commissioner of the New York State Department of Education, as well as the New York State Superintendent of Public Instruction. And she also had an uncle, Walter H. Draper, who was president, or I should say professor of communication at the State of University at Urbana-Champaign in Illinois. So she went to Washington Irving High School, then the American Musical and Dramatic Academy of Arts, and she was in a number of films in the middle 60s, which never really got proper release. She was Tina in The Teenager, which was never released, and that was a big production that was shot in 6 countries, and God knows why that why that didn't go. She was also in a movie called Felicia, an unedited credit, and in a documentary film called Bold New Approach in 1966, which dealt with a mental health case study documentary. She met Thayer David and Grayson Hall in a play called Those Play the Clowns, and from there she did the Dark Shadows episodes. Next we have George McCoy, who is the Eagle customer. So the Blue Whale has its now counterpart in being the Eagle. And Bob O'Connell finally gets a great Irish brogue role as the innkeeper of the Eagle as Mr. Mooney. And that's in episode 419. George McCoy is also in episode 419. Roger Davis now takes the 4 as Peter Bradford. And he appears in episodes 421, 428, 429, 433, 434, 436, and 437. Dan Morgan comes back as Riggs, the servant, in episodes 422, 423, and 425. Thayer David comes back as Ben in episode 426. He's on for a number of episodes. Then we have the 3 judges. So this is the first time we actually see a trial on Dark Shadows. And that, of course, is Vicky Winters, who was accused of being a witch. And the judges are, first judge, Judge Hanley, is played by Leslie Barrett, starting in episode 427. Now, a very interesting story regarding Leslie Barrett. Leslie Barrett was actually in an episode of The Honeymooners. Now, remember we talked a while ago about, I would say it's the first year of Dark Shadows, and an actor by the name of George Matthews played Amos Fitch, who was working at the Collinsport Cannery, and there was a whole scene with Burke and so forth trying to take over the cannery, and Amos Fitch stuck up for Roger. Well, that was played by George Matthews, who in The Honeymooners played Harvey in the Brooklyn Bomber episode. There was Harvey, the big guy, and then George, the little guy. And George, the little guy, was... He did that to my friend, Harvey. You did that to my friend. You can't do that to my friend. Well, anyway, George, this little short fella, was played by Leslie Barrett, who is actually the head judge of the trial here in Dark Shadows. So another very weird Honeymooners Dark Shadows crossover here. The second judge was played, and Leslie Barrett, by the way, was very, very famous in other areas. He was actually in the first Dead End movie opposite Billy Hallop. He took over as one of the Dead End kids. He had a great career up until 1981, where he was in The Dresser. He started the American Mime Theater with Tony Curtis. He was in many Shakespearean productions. So the Leslie Barrett had a very, very distinguished history. Okay, and then the second judge was Hansford Rowe, who was in the 3 Days of the Condor and the final battle. Tom Gorman, the Blue Whale extra, as we know, played the third judge, and James Shannon played the guard. James Shannon was in The Doctors as well as Blue Steel. So those were the judges, and those judges were on episodes 427 and 433. And we're going to get to, actually there was another judge who took over. Actually that was in 437, Hal White took over for the second judge, and he replaced the second judge that we were talking about, Hansford Rowe. Okay, moving on. Peter Murphy, who was the stand-in for Barnabas in The Coffin in 428, many roles on Dark Shadows, and he portrayed the jailer or the Gowler in a later episode. And that's the first time you really see Peter Murphy in regular garb, and you can see he kind of looks like Jonathan Fritz, so it's understandable as to why they used him as often as he did to stand in for him. Jerry Lacey was in episodes 427, 429, 434, 437. David Hennessy now makes his first appearance in the 1795 block as Daniel Collins in episodes 431 and 432, Millicent's brother. Lara Parker comes on for a one-episode shot as the witch in 435. Tony Goodstone plays the bailiff in episode 437. And Timothy Gordon, well, we can't forget Timothy Gordon, returning as Barnabas's disembodied hand in episode 438. Can't miss Timothy Gordon whenever they need a hand. Excuse the pun. Now, Vala Clifton comes on as Maud Browning in episode 339, the last one in this block, as the second victim of Barnabas. And she's going to be in another few episodes that go into the next block. But notable about Vala Clifton is she was the only extra, or doxy, as the fans used to call it. The doxies were all those women on the dock that Barnabas attacked. And she was the only doxy ever to do an introductory voiceover for Dark Shadows, and she did that for 2 of the 3 episodes that she was on. Finally, Craig Slocum, who in episode 339 starts a recurring role as Noah Gifford in 1795, and he will go on in as another character role after they get out of 1795, and we won't tell you who. The old fans will know, the new fans, we will surprise you. Now, it's the bloopers on the show. Well, here there are, to the show's credit, there are many more closed caption bloopers than there are actual bloopers on the show. And for those of you who are interested enough to watch the closed captioning, some of those bloopers are very, very funny. I have seen more closed caption bloopers in this block than in any other block that I've seen so far on Amazon Prime. And apparently the closed caption person was having a field day. Or maybe he or she was drunk or something. In any event. Okay, so very, very briefly now, episode 420, Barnabas bites Josette on the left side, and that's in the last scene. In episode 421, in the first scene, he bites her on the right side, so he bites her on the opposite side. They did the staging the opposite way. I kind of got a kick out of the fact that Barnabas is in his coffin in the morning while Josette is in bed. That wasn't a blooper, so to speak, but it kind of wondered, well, on Dark, unlike when people have regular sex, they're in bed afterwards smoking a cigarette. In Dark Shadows, Barnabas is in the coffin and she's in bed looking up, which is kind of interesting. Some of these closed caption bloopers, there are a ton of them. I'm not going to go into all of them, but instead of "you will lose a ring," it's spelled "you will loose a ring," Loose. Instead of Miss Winters, the closed caption is Miss Sweaters. And so that gives you a little example. I have a few more for later on. Getting back to the actual bloopers on the show, you will see in episode 422 a Mike Boom's shadow on the tapestry above the bed. In episode 424, when the bat is attacking Suki, you hear a crash in the old house, once again without actually seeing the window crash in. In episode 425. So when you see Josette looking at herself as she would have been as a vampire, Angelique has this vision of her. And the famous story there is that those fangs that you see are actually upside-down false fingernails, which Catherine Leigh Scott wore. Okay, another closed caption blooper refers to instead of the deposition of Miss Winter's trial, the closed caption blooper will read the deposition of Miss Winter's child. Interesting. Okay, in 420, once again, episode 427 has the first trial for Dark Shadows. Jerry Lacey, you'll see him looking at the teleprompter, after he finishes, waiting for Roger Davis just to make sure. In episode 428, and this is in the graveyard, well, you can see the brick floor where the soil didn't cover it. Obviously, it's a studio, and they put soil on top of the floor, but they didn't put it and in the beginning of the scene, you can actually see that brick floor where the cemeteries used to be. Where the cemetery is supposed to be. In episode 429, there's backstage chatter when Joshua, Ben, and Peter are talking. In episode 439, in 429, excuse me. In the secret room, the camera pans to the left. You see the end of that set, and then you see the beginning of an empty set. In episode 430, there is a call off stage when Abigail and Natalie are talking. In episode 431, once again, now, so Daniel's outside of the old house, and this is supposed to be in the outside. The camera moves to the left. You see the end of that outside set, and the next set, you can see a room with a lit candle on the wall, which is, of course, all the sets were next to each other. And another closed caption, Ben is called Matt instead of Ben in the closed caption. Roger Davis makes a very rare blooper in episode 433 where he calls Lieutenant Forbes Lieutenant Collins. In episode 434, Naomi Joan Bennett calls Peter Bradford Peter Brandon. And finally, the best one of this block, in episode 436, Ben is leaning against a tree as he is on the outside, as he's backing away. And as he leans against the tree, which is paper mache, starts to shake from side to side. And you can actually see it's a wonder it didn't fall down. So those are examples of the bloopers that occurred during this block. Great talking with you. And now let's get back to the show.
To the Collinsport News. I'm Vicki Ray.
And I'm Keith Shago, and here is the news of today.
Barnabas reluctantly informs Josette that they must stay apart forever, even though he's so infatuated that he cannot even seem to keep away. He's like a heroin addict looking for his next fix. This man needs to go to AA or some other kind of stalker anonymous meeting.
Meanwhile, Suki Forbes arrives in Collinsport to put a spanner in the works of Nathan's plans. It appears that he is already married, and this little Florio is going to be hot water when this news comes out.
Meanwhile, what kind of name is Suki anyway? Who the hell came up with that name? Obviously someone who's been dipping their toes into 1960 instead of the 1700s. Or it's a variance of True Blood.
I know, and considering that Suki means love and is a Korean and Japanese name, this woman is whiter than the bloody queen. I guess maybe her parents are just sarcastic because there's nothing loving about this one.
Well, it seems that Nathan is known, or says Suki, that he tends to go after rich girls and scams them for their money, even though Nathan swears up and down that he is in love with Millicent. It appears that Nathan has a thing for blondes.
Suki arrives at Collinswood and tells Millicent that he is his sister, even though everyone who knows Nathan does seem to know that he has siblings. It appears that everyone knows that he is an only child, but they seem to go along with this, even though they do not voice their concerns to him.
Barnabas and Josette meet up again and embrace. Like an addict, Barnabas cannot keep away from his love intended. Josette seems to bounce back from widowhood to become the ingenue once again. As Josette becomes involved in the throes of love, this raises concern with Natalie, who goes to see Victoria and pleads for her to break the spell.
Victoria Winter swears up and down that she is not a witch, but doesn't state her case very well, saying that Natalie must leave Collinsport with Josette as she is going to die. Personally, if I was Josette, I would just let fate happen and keep my mouth shut, as her openness never seems to fare well with her.
Joshua is concerned that everyone seems to be seeing Barnabas flitting around the place and considering that he should be secretly dead. Barnabas is not very good with the cloak and dagger stuff and seems like he wants to be seen. Joshua goes to the tomb and finds that Barnabas's coffin is empty. Barnabas is out on the prowl yet once again.
Suki decides to immerse herself in the community, and being the gossip girl that she is, soon puts two and two together and figures out that Barnabas is what he is and tells Nathan Forbes. Of course, Nathan doesn't believe in his wayward wife and takes what she says in his stride. Suki, living up to the blonde roots, decides that she will go to his tomb. The secret room in the tomb seems to be not so secret anymore as she gets in. Nice. And she goes right to the coffin and announces curtains for Suki. Goodbye, Suki. It was nice knowing you.
The Family Chronicles, or the Family History book, states that Josette is going to die the next day, and even though they'd rather stay out of the Victoria witch scandal to spare the family. Excuse me, but isn't your family the one who started the witch hunt and Psycho Abigail Collins the reason this is all taking place to begin with?
Yeah, well, it's a bit late to back out of that storyline now.
I agree. It seems that Joshua and Naomi are fearing for Josette's life, though, even though they don't believe a word of what is written. Everyone is trying to protect Josette, but like a spoiled teenager, she seems to think that she knows best. Angelique calls from beyond the grave, as this woman apparently has spells after death, though it makes you wonder where she was in present-day Collingwood if she is still inflicting her poisonous attributes to get what she wants.
Angelique calls to Josette to come to Widow's Hill, which she does, and sees a terrifying vision of herself and throws herself or falls off the cliff. She splatters on the rocks below, and now Barnabas has to learn to go cold turkey and find other ways to stalk.
Millicent goes on a stroll around the graveyard after dark. I guess to confirm that she's as dumb as she sounds and looks. For whatever reason, she is in her own stupor, as she now knows that Nathan and Suki are actually man and wife, and through her pity party that she is holding for herself, she goes for a walk and sees Barnabas. Barnabas runs away after seeing her. Yeah, that works for Barnabas. Pretend you don't see someone that you have seen, and they will think that it is their imagination and not tell anyone.
And telling someone is what she does, and runs home and tells Joshua, "Hey, I saw Barnabas." It seems that he didn't go to London after all, blah, 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 and Joshua, to confirm Millicent's fragile mind, tells her that she is seeing things. Now Millicent has a broken heart, man issues, and it seems that she now can't trust her own eyesight. Poor Millie. We shall call her Millie the stupid filly.
The Victoria Winter Witch Trial is now gearing up and running as we get Abigail taking center stage to testify against Victoria. And it seems like the O.J. Simpson trial of 1795, with no one able to flat out testify, with lots of objections, and Trask and Peter butting heads and back and forth within the courtroom.
Meanwhile, Joshua goes back to the mausoleum to check on Barnabas' coffin yet once again, and Barnabas' body is back where it should be. This actually raises some questions like, what is Barnabas doing with the bodies as he killed? Let's face it, he killed Angelique and Suki in the tomb, but their bodies are not there. Another question, what they don't, is why don't they become vampires? That would have been so cool to have all these women vamps running around, but then again, Barnabas seems to be struggling over biting which such a waste of a good gift. So basically, poor Barnabas doesn't know where to bite anyway, so who knows what he's doing. He's a bad vampire.
He sucks at vampire head sometimes. It seems that Barnabas has more visitors in his tomb than he did when he was alive, living in the old house, and has decided to move his coffin to the old house. It seems that he doesn't realize that the problem is not the coffin, but his body not being where it should be, and due to the lack of forward thinking, appears not to realize a missing coffin may raise more questions, but Ben moves him back to the basement of the old house.
Peter comes up with a stroke of genius, and decides to hide the Collins family history book, fearing that it will be used against Victoria. Considering that everyone knows about it and this is going to help, he does it all the same. Anyway, no book, no evidence, and everyone is just making up the book's existence up will certainly prove that Victoria is not a witch. We know where this is going.
Clearly. Barnabas, apparently distraught over losing Josette again, but this time to the Grim Reaper and not an uncle, mourns the loss of his intended and raises her from the dead. Excuse me, he can now raise people from the dead? When did he learn this special skill? And let's think about this. She goes over the cliff. Her head smashes like a melon hit against the sledgehammer, and he thinks this is a good thing. Well, he does this, and of course her face is disfigured, and back to hell or heaven or the netherworld she goes.
Barnabas returns to his coffin bed, and nosy Abigail decides to poke around the old house where it seems to be the thing to do as the sun goes down. Doesn't anyone do any investigation during the day, like around noon, especially as this is pre-electric light period? You're running around with a candle. You might want to go during the daytime. But anyway, Abigail finds herself in the basement, notices the coffin, and Barnabas wakes up to do his naughty nightly walk. Abigail screams is the end of the line for this old hag. He should have done this long ago, as she is such a nasty, nasty person.
Yeah, buddy. Peter goes to Nathan to plead with him to testify on behalf of Victoria. He reluctantly agrees, but he has problems of his own. Millie the filly won't see him, and his heart pines for him. His heart pines for her. Suki has disappeared, and Joshua is upset on the way that he has treated Millie, that he is threatening him to strip him of his title and rank.
Trask decides that he doesn't have enough witnesses and decides why not get Daniel involved, considering what he has been missing for around 2 months worth of episodes, and he might know something more. We learn that Trask is like that child catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and goes all Michael Jackson on Daniel, causing him to run off into the woods, and where he finds the body of Abigail, eyes wide open, mouth wide open, and a scream dead against the tree. We now learn that Barnabas is not only a crappy vampire, but not a very good at hiding dead bodies either. Not sure where his brain is at some time, but this only fuels more weaponry against poor Victoria Winters of being a witch.
Nathan perjures himself after Trask has words with him that if you speak against Victoria, I will ensure that I protect your title, rank. And of course, Nathan's going to go along with it. This upsets Peter, and he accuses Nathan of being a cad. Peter reiterates what this actually means for Victoria, but Nathan is too self-centered and shallow to care, although he does kind of feel a bit remorseful for his actions.
The next day at the trial, Ben shows up to testify that Angelique is the actual witch, but as she does, she appears out of thin air to testify, much to the horrors of Ben, who knows that she is dead. Her testimony pretty much forms the noose which will hang around Victoria's death anyway.
Peter, being desperate, decides that maybe Victoria needs to be honest and tell the truth despite the risk. I'm sorry, but Peter is the worst lawyer in history, in a town full of superstitions and a religious zealot who has made his name killing women for witchcraft, that this is the best plan he can come up with? Really?
Victoria has her day in court, and it seems that her incessant whining and not keeping focus on what her truths are does not perform well in court, especially as everything she says just gives Trask more ammunition against her. Needless to say, this doesn't go at all well, and Victoria Winters is found guilty, where she'll swing from a rope until dead. She is now considered a witch, and why they did not burn her is anyone's guess.
Budgetary reasons, probably. Barnabas finds out Victoria's predicament and vows to gain revenge on the unjust decision against her and starts to put his plan in action against Reverend Trask. Why he did not do this sooner is anybody's guess, but he comes up with a scathingly brilliant plan that will wreak havoc on the one man who deserves some hell placed upon him.
Barnabas goes shopping for streetwalkers and comes across Maud Browning and attacks her, leaving his cane behind. Why does a vampire need a cane anyway? He doesn't look like he needs to walk with a cane, so why take it with him when he's on the hunt? He stupidly drops it at the crime scene, and Nathan finds out about it. Putting this together, what Suki told him earlier before her death comes to the conclusion that there is only one person with a wolf-headed cane in Collinsport, and it must be Barnabas.
And this concludes our news report for Collinsport. I'm Vicki Ray.
And I'm Keith Shago. You all have a good night, and be safe until next time. Hello, welcome back to Literary License Podcast, and we're discussing Dark Shadows of 419 to 439. So, Jesse, what are your thoughts of these episodes?
I mostly like this part of the series, because the 1795 storyline is my favorite. There are some slower moments. I'm not overtly thrilled about Nathan Forbes' character. I think sometimes him and Trask's team up really, I feel like it's unnecessarily elongated in a few episodes, because I feel like that's all a few of the episodes are about, like 3 in a row or something like that, and it's just kind of tedious. And then when he finally gets bricked up, that makes everything so much better. And then I think it gets better after that, but still, Nathan Forbes' character is the
They
most
kind of ignored
frustrating,
these storylines, didn't they? A little bit.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden he becomes like the head honcho and the villain of the TV series, goes from attacking Millicent, and trying to make it sound like she's crazy because she signs over her money to Daniel, and then he shoots Barnabas. It doesn't work, and then you have the weird psychic lady, which I'm like, I wish you could summon psychics like that, but it doesn't actually work that way. You just have to call them on their, I don't know, their little card or something like you would any other business. But yeah, I don't know. I totally forgot about that until I rewatched it the other day. Because it's such a brief period in the show where they call that lady Natalie, and I just want to call him Roger because that's just who he is.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Three plots basically are going on during this period of time, and of course you got Josette's death, and the big goodbye where she throws herself off Widow's Hill, and the whole.
Which it seems that everything centralizes about everybody that knows. People, especially that don't watch Dark Shadows, they always know about the Josette tragedy. Have you ever noticed that? That's the one thing that everybody knows: the Josette and the Barnabas, star-crossed tragedy that happened.
Well, yeah. Because that's like the thing that they introduced early on, even before they introduced Barnabas's character as Josette and her death and stuff like that. I don't know what they reveal about her death in the first few seasons. I don't think
it was very different.
Do talk about her jumping off of Widow's Hill. It still happened at Widow's Hill, I guess. I do like the story that was told like during the nighttime, during a heavy storm, and Barnabas is talking about her death in such a poetic kind of creepy way. That's got to be one of my favorite scenes in the series.
Sure. No, absolutely.
I kind of want her music box. I've kind of become entranced with that theme now. I want that music box. I've looked everywhere, all over for one. And
that second theme was genius on Cobert's part. Yeah. Because really the first theme wasn't, just sounded like a dilapidated merry-go-round.
I agree.
But the second theme really evokes the past and the minuet, which is really, by the way, in the revival, they really make a big deal out of that theme.
It's sort of like a smell that comes to mind that gives you a memory, And so when you hear that music from Josette's music box, it kind of evokes, certain feelings and memories if you're really into the show. Well, at least that myself. I'm sure there's other people that could say that.
Well, in point of fact, and they used to sing this at the Dark Shadows conventions all the time. I don't know if some fan wrote words to it. Yeah. And I still remember it. Josette, dearest, please be my love. I need you more than all others above. Here I wait for your answer to me. My heart, my soul, I give thee. And then Josette answers, yes, I love you. Oh, yes, I do. Anyway, et cetera, and so on.
Clearly
those fans that want to hear the whole thing.
Too, Tom.
It was in 16 magazine, which was the big. Everybody back then looked to 16 magazine and Gloria Stavers, who was the editor. No, 16 for the kids. 17 is for women. 17 was for women.
Right. Tiger Beat.
16 was for the teeny boppers like me. And Gloria Stavers was the editor, and she had it in with Curtis and all the rest of them. Okay, and so they'd send photographers down to the studio to take pictures. And it was in the same magazine with Bobby Sherman and Davy Jones and the Monkees and all. Will you get it? Will you get a date with Barnabas tonight? That kind of thing. And
Peter Noon you might get a date with Peter Noon.
Oh, I'm ready. The eighth I am.
I would have rather Keith Moon than Peter Moon, but Keith Moon would have been a lot more fun.
But anyway, so you had so you did have Josette's death, and then of course the trial. And the trial, I think, is the first time we had a legal trial on Shadows, and that to me is really the hit of the block. because everybody is screaming at each other, and they're all and Jerry Lacey is in great style, emoting his by the judge of the. I look to heaven for this. For the outcome, that kind of thing. He's going crazy, and
Kind
Vicky
of
is
reminds me of
crying.
the Assembly of God Church down the street.
That's funny. That's funny. And then finally, the other plot is the Nathan and Suki, and that's the soap opera-ish element of this particular block.
Suki had very small part, but I actually kind of enjoyed Suki.
Jane Draper. And interestingly enough, and it's in the block, Jane Draper's great grandfather was the first commissioner of the New York State Department of Education. So she had some interesting background. She comes from an academic background, and he was also, the great grandfather was also president of the University of Illinois. But
where
anyway,
do you think they came with that name? Where did Suki come up? I mean, was
that's such a 1960s name? I have to sit there and say that was like Suki.
Really?
It almost, yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it sounded Asian too.
Yeah, it is. It
is an Asian name. Yeah, I did some research on it. It is an Asian name. Actually.
Yeah, it's a Japanese name. So
and this woman was whiter than the queen. So
what?
That's for sure. But so there are those three plots, and I think and I think they had to wind up the Josette's thing, and of course they did it in this Grand Guignol fashion, and she comes back as a ghost for one episode, so you can see what looks like a frog eye on her face.
No, that's because Barnabas summons her back from the grave.
Hold her back. That's right.
Yeah, why would he call someone back from the grave after their head was smashed? Like
it's not like they had funeral services back then where he could put her back together and say, "Oh, this is the best she's ever looked."
Well, he's in La La Land.
They puttied her face back together.
I mean, he's in La La Land.
She was more terrifying than the Bride of Frankenstein. She makes the Bride of Frankenstein look like I don't know, some
Let me rest
model or something. Exactly.
Even when they made her up to look like a vampire in that dream, when Angelique appears to her and shows her what life will be like after, because most of those female vampires were really good looking with fangs.
They're supposed to be sexy as shit.
That's right.
Where's the sexy and the vampire in this sequence of events here?
Not that way. And by the way, the fangs that she wore were actually false fingernails. I don't know if you were aware of that. Those were
No, I was not.
False fingernails upside down that they put in her mouth. It was. There are pictures that still exist to this day of her being made up.
I've seen some of those.
Yeah, remember? And Costello, the producer, is showing her how to open her mouth so to make her look menacing, that kind of thing. I mean, she could have been such a great looking vampire, Catherine.
Oh, I know. They so wasted it.
But it wasn't a nightmare dream sequence though, as well.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
So it's not like a reality one. So,
well,
but then again, I mean, the female vampires are always kind of like in dream sequences, though. So far,
but there are many
just
female vampires in dream sequences, and they made her. But no, you're right. Angelique wanted her to jump off the cliff. Now, if she were going to make Josette look like a real beauty, Josette would have said, "Oh, I can't wait." So, so it makes sense that I can see it from that standpoint. But it just detracted. But still, in all. Probably very scary for the kids watching the show at that time. That's another thing. But
I have to sit there and say though, now that we're at the end of Josette's story cycle, I have to sit there and say that it kind of reminded me of a horror movie. It's like whether it's Michael Myers or whether it's Jason, and the thing is, it's like so menacing, and you're watching it, and you had like just mystery around them. And we had this mystery about Josette. Now that we know Josette's story, I feel a bit let down. It wasn't as great as what was in my mind about the Josette and Barnabas love triangle.
I agree.
Love story. And I have to sit there and say that So I think Barnabas is coming into his own, even though I have to sit there and say that
Yeah.
his heroin addiction to Josette during this block is a bit odd.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I think more people have seen Barnabas dead than they had when he was alive, running around. So, but
Where
yeah,
did he get the witchcraft powers all of a sudden to summon the dead? I mean, you know.
yeah,
That was never explained. They
Well, it
explained that
wasn't-
better in the movie than they did in the
Yeah.
show.
But I have to sit there and say that there just seems to be, and they just seem to be playing a lot with some of the logic in this block. It's almost like, you know, Angelique's dead. Now she can come back from the dead. Now she has magical powers beyond the grave. So it's kind of like,
Right.
okay, well, we'll take that in. But yeah, I guess the whole Josette thing, I guess in my mind, you had this great big passionate love story. And this is what we've been told up to this point. And then the reality is it wasn't that passionate of love story, really. It's almost like
There was no passion. What passion? You know, I mean,
yeah,
was it
polite
because
kissing.
back then they couldn't have those passionate scenes? Is that why it was written that way?
I know. but
Well,
playing
I
passionate
found more
scenes
love
with
between
Angelique.
Josette and
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah.
than I did between Barnabas.
It was
and
far
Josette.
more warm and welcoming than there's
Yeah,
really
and it was
nothing going
fake. And it was supposed to be fake and under all due to the spell that Angelique put on them. So it was kind of ironic that happened that way. But yeah, I think Josette's Enigma, it kind of failed to continue after this storyline, just because when you're introduced to her, even before they introduced Barnabas, there is this kind of eerie enigma surrounding Josette all the time. And they just build up her character, and then you get this, and it's like, oh, that's it? Okay,
because
cool.
the portrait, it all starts with the portrait, correct? I mean,
Yeah.
It doesn't even look like her.
around the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you
then
expect
again,
some-
Shadow.
I guess the thing is, though, I mean, maybe this is a lesson to maybe it is on purpose, because maybe this is a lesson to be learned about legends. And once you have a legend and you have like these legends, and then when you get beyond the legend and you actually see the reality, that never lives up to the legends, does it? Well, no matter like you know, the haunted house scandals, and then you go to the haunted house and like, okay,
I've done that a few times. Go to an investigation, you're expecting everything to be opening, shutting, you're expecting, you know, everything to happen. It's just like, okay, when's it gonna happen?
But I guess it's a bit like, you know, any kind of story or legend is told mouth to mouth, you know, mouth to mouth, and then it passes through time, and then it becomes something that, you know, it becomes so much more elaborated than what the original.
Well, it becomes bigger in your psyche than it does in actuality.
Yeah.
You know?
A legendary game of telephone.
I mean, we did learn that Barnabas suffers from, you know, compulsive obsessive behavior. I mean, God Almighty, he's got a one-track mind, doesn't he? He's like, I'm going after Josette, and this is what I'm going to do, and he causes the death of everyone. It's like he's like the kiss of death.
But that's because of Angelique, though.
No, it's not, because the thing is like, you know, he causes Sarah's death, doesn't he? If he stayed away from the bloody open window, Sarah would still be alive. You know, if he stayed away from Josette, but it's like, you know, he has to have what he wants, and he's almost like this. He's kind of like this spoiled child that if he doesn't, he'll do whatever he wants to get what he wants, even though it might be bad for the other person. He doesn't learn a lesson at all. It's always the same. He's on this merry-go-round of the same mistake over and over again.
Kills Abigail, despite
Abigail had it coming, though.
But then Vicky's blamed for it. What was he saying? Oh, I never thought they would have blamed Vicky for that.
How many people, though, break out of jail then go back to jail? Come on.
Yeah, but I mean, where's she gonna go? I mean, you know,
to the next state.
Yeah, but I'm saying that, you know, I guess another thing, I mean, I was thinking about that after the last episode that we taped, and I was thinking about the whole Victoria thing, and I guess the problem basically is she leaves Collinsport. Does that mean that she can't go back to her own time? Maybe. And I thought maybe that was the conditioning sort of thing. If I leave Collinsport, maybe that means I'll never be able to go back to my time.
Well, or if anything happens other than what's supposed to happen, which is predestined, will I be able to?
But it might not have ever happened had she not gone back into time and meddled. Maybe if she just shut up.
No, I think it would have happened. I don't think it happened as fast as it would have.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about that.
That was something that was frustrating about Victoria's character, is that you know everyone's thinking that you're a witch, that there's suspicions around, and you're still saying things out loud on accident. Oh, but that's not how it happened.
Yeah.
That wasn't what was written in the book. What book? What are you talking about?
the
And it's
worst-
like, just stop.
The book from the 20th century.
But the worst thing, unfortunately, Peter Bradford wasn't. Well, he was a law student, but boy, did he have a lot to learn. Because the stupidest thing he ever did in that trial was to say to her, "Tell the truth."
Oh, I know.
Have you
tell the truth and here's your rope. Tell the truth and here's your rope.
1966 or 1967.
I was born in 1946. So,
tell the truth? Speak
And then
the
he
truth,
says-
Victoria.
I think you got a great chance, Vicky. They've been talking for an hour. They would have been talking for 2 minutes otherwise. So, big deal. They probably were laughing for the first 55 minutes. That's why it took so long. I mean, for God's sakes, listen, you know, if you're going to, in my mind, if you're going to start out with a certain story, you keep with that story. You don't wait till the end. And then, you know, I mean, Trask was all over that story, like, you know, like, and you got to hand it to Jerry Lacey with those.
He was awesome, this
those
Trask.
grins and those, you know,
He was the ultimate evil. He did such a good job with that character. You hated him. I loved to hate him. I really did. It was great.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
liked him better than the Revival's version. I wasn't too impressed with the
Oh,
Revival's
that's
version. I
terrible.
felt like that one was more of a cliche than it was a good portrayal of Trask's
Roy
character.
Thins and
Yeah, it was actually much more of a stereotype.
Well, Trask is just so menacing. It's like he's just one of those characters that you just hate. You hate everything about him. But you hate it just deliciously. He's just
Jerry Lacey is Trask. Roy Thins, forget about it. I mean, as they say in Brooklyn. I mean, it was no. What did they on the Revival? He had long fingernails or something.
Yes,
You
yes.
know?
What was that?
I mean, looked like Nosferatu. You know, I mean, what kind of nonsense is this? That was wrong. That was Roy Thins and it was miscast. But that's the Revival. As far as Jerry Lacey was concerned, he hit the nail on the head. And yes, he was very holy Hosanna and so forth. But between the widows, you know, it was a great conversation between him and David Hennessy. And they wasted him in that role, and they wasted David Hennessy as far as I was concerned. But you know,
I think so too.
Was he at school or something? I mean,
he's never around.
I think it was so stupid for
He
them.
appears once, and then we don't
earlier.
see him for 2 months, and there he goes. And then we got Trask running around after asking Daniel what's going on. Like Daniel's going to know. It's like I haven't even been here. It's like hello.
I think it was a great line when there was some good writing by Sam Hall where Trask says to him, "Are you acquainted with the devil?" or something like that, and he says to him, "Well, you sure look like the devil." When he told that to Trask, you know, that kind of thing. and I mean, it's like, you know, kids say the darndest things, but that was but the Trask. You know, he was certainly the perfect one. The only thing I can't understand is how is Trask, who's not a lawyer, representing the state, and Roger Davis as Peter Bradford, who's a law student. I mean, he technically had more experience than Trask did, but Trask wound up.
Trask was just one of those like he was like a circuit minister / judge that went around when he was called or needed for this and that. I'm assuming
He was the Witchfinder General, wasn't he? I mean,
I mean, it's sort of like in the Crucible, don't you think? Something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And
but I mean, this was a state of law, though. It wasn't. I mean, we're past the witch, you know, the whole witch trials.
Right.
So it was kind of. Yeah, I have to agree. It's a bit. It's a bit odd. I mean,
Well, it was a bit odd for 1795 because they really weren't hanging people for witchcraft then.
Well, they weren't
No.
going on that, but again,
Yeah, that was. I think they stopped around that time, actually, especially in America. I think in the UK, you still might have had something going on in the UK or something, but
Right.
I don't know in Europe. But
Matthew Hopkins. at that. But I think that was
Well, they kind of made up for that, but that's
1600s.
near the end of Dark Shadows, where they were in another time period and they had a trial, and they talked about reactivating an old 1692 law. But they didn't talk about that here because they really, at this point, they really were into, getting the drama and squeezing as much out of it as they could.
Right.
They weren't going to get too historical.
Artistic license.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think Roger Davis.
The court sequences were some of the strongest in this block.
I was going to say, sure. It is the major point, and one of the major points of this block, actually. And all the others really paled, aside from the Josette thing, which we knew was coming to a climax. But there we knew it was going to happen because of the legend. But here, we know Vicky is going to be, or do we know that Vicky is going to be convicted?
Not really.
Not really. That's right. That's right.
We don't. Vicky's the only person that we don't know anything about what's going to happen to her.
Right.
Everyone else we've been told what's going to happen. Vicky, we still don't know. So.
And so I agreed. So there's that suspension of disbelief, and it certainly does play into the plot a lot more. Roger Davis did a pretty decent job, I think, of portraying the. Because remember, I mean, what was he given to do? He's going to be the nice guy, the honest guy, the one that that he and Vicky, and not too many passionate love scenes. I think it gets a little better later on.
They kind of smooch a little bit where it looks a little more what you're used to, but it's not like full like General Hospital, Young and the Restless. We got open mouths and tongues.
There's just a little bit of like grazing of the hand every once in a while.
I don't like Rod. I don't like those two together either. I don't think
it seems unnatural. It's an unnatural character. It's not a chemistry.
You can tell.
Well,
you can tell. There's
let's face it. It's a big taboo as well. I mean, lawyer going, dating the client.
Well, even
don't
when
think that didn't happen? I'm sure it did.
Even when later, which I won't go into detail about it, but even later with the characters and they reunite somehow. Right. That it's still awkward then, and then that taboo isn't there.
If you compare it to Burke and Vicky, I think you're always going to get that.
I want Burke back.
Or the other one as well. Who's the other one?
Frank Garner. Frank Garner.
And even then, there was nothing.
I like them two together too.
There was nothing,
and there was the coop, didn't he? After that mausoleum.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, the story is the actor wanted a raise, and they didn't give it to him, so he.
Well, that's the breaks.
Yeah, that kind of thing. But with those, okay, so Frank Garner, that was just a very happy, normal, spontaneous. They're having a great time relationship,
and they look like they're the same age.
And then Burke, and then Burke with that macho, and stuff like that, and even so, if you're going to compare Peter Bradford and Vicky to Vicky's other people, it's always going to fall short.
I don't know what it is about it too, because they're both good actors.
No, I think it's because I think Vicky always needs a man that's going to protect her. You need a man to protect Vicky.
Well, he is in essence trying to protect her.
Yeah, but he's a bookish protector. He's kind of
but he fulfills that though. He still fulfills that, and he's.
But I tell the truth. So I don't. Tell it, Vicky. This is your only chance here. Go for it.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem.
I'll help
you out. That's why he's a law student and he isn't a lawyer, because that just sunk the whole thing down the toilet. And one would have wondered, and of course, if Angelique hadn't made the grand entrance,
right,
they would have believed Ben. Ben just lost it when she came in. You're dead.
But they don't address is like, okay, so she's a full blown apparition, or did she actually rise from the grave, and is she actually?
She's an apparition because she starts out faint, doesn't she? And she starts solidifying.
It's kind of like she's a ghost.
Technically, if we went and found her where her bones were lying, we could probably, get rid of her and banish her to the nether regions of the realm. But
you have to burn her in salt
all the time.
She was a ghost witch. I guess that's the close. They never explained it.
No, I always
technically, she can morph into anything she wants. She can be a vampire. She can be a ghost. She can be a witch. She could just be so many different things.
Yeah.
It's like almost
probably
like
a werewolf too, but
she actually belongs with Barnabas more than any of them. You know.
Well, there's where
we all know what's
came in. We talked about that before. There's where the passion really came in.
Right.
But what I think the message is that passion is false, because the real deal that you're going for is that ideal with Josette and them dancing in some mythical old house heaven, or something like that. But the Vicky and Bradford thing is more of a Romeo and Juliet, star-crossed kind of thing, and if you think of it, I mean, Vicky's naive, and in the end, so is Peter Bradford. He's just as naive as she is. So,
which is very unappealing because.
But the other thing that goes on is more people are visiting the mausoleum where Barnabas is supposed to be, than any of the...
everyone knows about that secret room. Have you noticed? Everyone, even Suki, who just
knows where it is,
knows about the secret room. It's like, hello.
That's her secret.
Central Station.
Everyone knows about it. It's not a secret anymore.
That's her secret.
Everybody.
It's a good thing they moved Barnabas when they did.
Well, I mean, Barnabas. How often did he go sit in his coffin anyways? Like, his father comes to visit him, he's not in the coffin.
Right.
Father goes back to visit him, he's in the coffin. Father goes back to visit him again, the coffin's gone. It's like that cup trick with the balls. It's like, where's Barnabas?
What I kind of like? I thought
either Barnabas is gone or the coffin's gone.
I thought it was really cute though. So after he bites her for the first time, and of course that was a blooper because at the end of the first show he bites her on the left side, and at the end of the next show he's biting her on the right side. But what was it? So the first thing you see is you see his coffin and it's closed, and then you see her in bed looking up dreamily, like that kind of thing. So instead of after sex, the two people are in bed together, one smoking a cigarette. He's in his coffin, and she's in the bed. That's Dark Shadows for you.
I know, I've just been drained of 5 pints of blood.
And what was he doing while he was sleeping there? Was he having a nice dream?
I know. What the fuck?
A wet one, probably.
I'm going to use That is so funny. That's really, but that's the 60s for you. But one thing I
do wonder about Barnabas, though. I mean, what is his motivation? I mean, it's like everyone sees. I mean, Barnabas is supposed to be off to London. This is what the story is, and
everybody sees him.
He's out roaming around all the time.
Now you don't. Yep.
Yeah, he's up hitting up prostitutes and everything downtown.
But
then you gotta wonder, like, they never implement, and this is where he first became a vampire. Remember in the 1960s when Barnabas first came on, and he started sucking on dogs and cows,
that's right, animals.
Cows. At Willie's wrist.
Now he's just sucking on like all kinds of like, gross people. Like imagine like Barnabas alive today. Like if you go to New York and you visit the slums, there's like you got the methadone people, you got the homeless people, you got a bunch of dirty street thugs. It's like that's who Barnabas would be sucking on, and it's like, why would you want that? I mean, that's really, really, really bad.
And the people that show up, it's like instead of like being like a buffet at your door, he's like, I'm gonna strangle you.
And why does he strangle them before biting?
First bite, and he goes to that thing, and then he turns it, and he gets drunk because he bites the drunk. And he turns into a bat, and he flies into some black person's house, and he goes, look, a black chicken.
That's love at first bite. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Love at first bite.
A black chicken.
It's a black chicken.
Because what was that guy drinking last night?
Oh, God.
But that's what it reminds me of at this point.
Why does Why does Barnabas like strangle people before biting them?
I know,
like,
he
does
doesn't
that
bite
so much
anybody.
of the time.
Always strangling.
I think
Not
he does one or
always,
the other,
but-
doesn't he? He either strangles them or bites them. I don't think he
That's
does
right.
But he hardly
okay.
ever bites anybody, though. It's always like this
He
stuff.
bears his fangs.
No, as Jesse's saying, he only bites hookers.
Well, the other thing
Basically,
was,
yeah.
we don't see it in this block, but
You want syphilis blood in you?
Well, we don't see it in this block, but they do refer to him as the Strangler in this block, and
Right.
and they wanted, and later on, all right, so it's just like a little bit. So in the next block, he's going to be called the Collinsport Strangler, and
God.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
yeah, and
But why does Barnabas need a cane? That's what it's like. He's a vampire. You don't need a cane.
well, it's
At this point,
It was
yeah.
stylish back then, too.
And he
And a
dropped
lot
it-
of
Well,
men
it was
dropped the damn
necessary.
cane. And he
A lot
dropped
of
the
men
damn
that walked
cane.
with canes had swords in them
Precisely.
and daggers.
Well, it was also necessary because
Yeah.
of cobblestones and things like that. But
That's
I don't
it.
know.
I
As a
think you're
vampire,
right.
Barnabas probably wouldn't need it as much. But
No, we just very.
Yeah.
Why don't you just like? I mean,
Stylish.
why don't you just bat off
Stylish.
somewhere? You know, turn into a bat,
Bat
mobilize,
Well, that's another thing. When he
find
turns
a
into
hooker,
bat, what the hell
bite
happens
her,
to the cane?
bat off.
But when he turns into a bat, what the hell happens to the cane he's carrying? You know?
that's
Good
true.
question. Where
that
does
would
it
be
go?
so funny. It'd be
He's
so
probably carrying
funny
it.
if
He's carrying it in his little paws, flapping away.
That would be so funny. Carrying that big thing in his tiny little paws. Oh my god.
And his ring, and the ring. Don't let the bat
And the ring, yeah.
ring.
Oh, yeah.
Ring on his clothes.
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
And his
Don't
clothes.
remind
What
me.
happens to his clothes? Barnabas is like running nude. Woo.
You're not supposed to think of these things, though, when they turn into
Oh, of course not. Of course not.
At least when
It is-
you get to what do you call it with the vampires and oh god, the stalking vampire with Kirsten there. What's her name? Why am I-
Violent?
Interview vampire.
No, not that
Interview
one.
with it?
With the big
Oh,
wolves.
Twilight.
Yeah, Twilight. Why
Oh, Twilight.
Too much
Oh,
fire
okay.
today. But Twilight, at least they lose their clothes when they turn into whatever the wolves do.
Well,
anyway.
no,
Right.
they only lose their shirts. Their clothes don't seem to come
Okay,
off
yeah,
down below.
maybe,
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe.
At least, and you don't have a problem with the werewolves because all the shirts rip when they become like an American Werewolf in London, you know, and all those shirts rip.
Good as hand.
Oh, those transformation scenes. Imagine if Dark Shadows had those
Back in
transformation
the day,
scenes. Now
I know.
It would have been
that would be phenomenal.
and they were dealing with state of the art stuff
Back
at that
then.
point.
Yeah.
So you can just imagine.
Well, we did have werewolves that basically only their chest split out, but they kept their pants on.
That's true.
Like Michael Landon and I was a teenage werewolf.
Of
so on and
course,
so
of
forth.
course. You know, that,
Yeah, but
Michael
I mean,
Landon
there's
was in
parts where
that?
you saw butt.
Yeah.
There was some bare butt in
Oh.
Twilight. There was bare butt.
I think that it was really unfortunate, and getting back to David Hennessy, really unfortunate that they brought him in so late, because if they had brought him in when
Yeah.
Sarah was alive, I think they would have had some really interesting scenes together. in
Yeah,
terms-
that's a
Well,
shame.
also, it would have been a
Yeah.
perfect mirror because, David and Sarah and then Daniel and Sarah. It would have been a perfect
Exactly.
mirror as to why she would have felt comfortable talking to David because they're similar or something like that. And they already did a
Exactly.
good job mirroring characters.
They are similar,
the
though.
first-
They're both little kids, and that's why she probably singles him out first to show herself.
Well, yeah.
And
He's the
plus
only
we had a
kid
lot of
and
scenes with
Colin's
just
poor.
David and Sarah, didn't we? Back
That's
in
right.
modern
Right,
time,
for the 20th century. So this would have been
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
The most they could do when they finally brought him in was to have a little scene with some scenes with Abigail that really reminded me of Mrs. Johnson and David. If you think about it, because Abigail is now. Are you going where you should be going, young man? And
How come she
and-
always
and
gets
he's-
the worst wigs, no matter what time period it is?
Which one?
Abigail or
Oh, I know,
Abigail.
I know. So many unflattering hairstyles, yeah, especially as Mrs. Johnson. That big, I don't know, big thing. Oh, I guess
It's like
that.
Psycho, Anthony Perkins' mother.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, you
I have to
also,
sit
You
there
got
and say, though,
Millicent.
I think
She's got this pile of curls on top of her head,
Yeah.
I do think that we do have to, mention Millicent and
Mhm.
Joshua. Millicent goes to the cemetery. She sees
Yeah.
Barnabas, goes back, and Joshua and perfect Louis Edmonds goes, That's not what you saw. You didn't see that. What are you talking about? It's like not only is Nathan Forrest driving her mad, even Joshua's going to drive her mad. It's like, no, you didn't see that. What are you talking about?
He does such a good job at playing the crazy little bubble-headed.
I was just about to say, yeah.
She does very. She's very diverse, and this shows that she does really well in these episodes.
I have to sit there and say that Nancy Barrett, so far, from everything that we've seen up to this point, is probably the most diverse actress that we've seen on this show.
No, that's true. That's true. And Nancy Barrett plays so many crazy characters, and with each one, she gets crazier. I think.
Yeah.
I love her now that her character has evolved. You know where I'm going with this. She's probably going to be my favorite character on this whole block because she really has evolved. And you know, once they got her out of that zone where she was just playing, you know, the daughter of Collinwood, and she gets into this other. You can see that she really is a good little actress. She can take on double.
Even when she was playing the daughter, remember when her mom gets taken away to a sanitarium and then she has to take over, and then we got a change there, and then we got the change where Barnabas bites her, and all of a sudden she becomes like a little mink,
more menacing,
but she's also menacing. She's very good at playing the ditz, and the best line that I wrote down was that when she saw Barnabas and then he disappears and she's trying to explain it, and she said, "He ran away from me. That wasn't nice of him." I mean, it's just so. But she also gives a background. They write a little background of the Millicent character when she's explaining that she was very sick as a child. You remember she had a number of illnesses. She's talking about that, and that she was protected. And because she was protected, she realized this is really basically an innately intelligent person who was sheltered and just kind of like and plus of course she's got the money and everything,
and so, she's blonde,
but that was the other.
I'm trying to figure out where the dumb blonde thing comes in, because seriously, it's a bad rap. Most people I know that are blondes are highly intelligent, evolved women,
including my fiance, by the way.
I used to dye my hair, and I was very blonde like decades ago. And I finally just, found about 10 years ago, went back to my normal, color. But I was treated different as opposed to being a brunette,
Interesting.
So
it's taboo.
Yeah, but Millicent's just, she's just a airhead dumb blonde, isn't she? She's like, I want to be a veterinarian because I like children.
Yeah.
Anybody who has problems with this, it's info@llpodcast.com.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Absolutely.
I'm a blonde. That's PLAND, I think.
I think also, getting back to Daniel.
I can't spell BW, but I got a Porsche because I'm a blonde.
Tom's trying to read this back in, guys.
Getting back to Daniel, and I don't know why they dropped this, but at one point Trask was trying to get Daniel to testify, if you remember.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And then he finds Abigail's body, which kind of like drops that story.
And I think he kind of dropped, but that would have hung Vicky faster than anything else, because she's telling the kids about airplanes. And
I know, how stupid can you be as a time traveler?
Kinds of
Victoria's not the brightest bulb on the tree here.
I mean, not. They don't give this girl any street smarts, anything. She's got nothing.
Which she would have as a freaking orphan in New York City. I'm sorry, she would have street smarts.
And what a come down! Because remember, the way the character was originally designed when we first started watching the show, she had a lot more strength to her. And she had a lot more guts, and she was able, and they really watered it down to the point.
I don't understand.
Well, everybody's saying that. I mean, to give everybody else credit.
I don't understand.
Nobody understands on that show.
When we first
I don't understand
on the train. When she meets Bert Devlin, you think, oh, wow, this is going to be, this girl's got some, big brass ones. She's going into her future kind of thing.
Yeah.
He deserves to be bullied. She's just got one of the personalities.
No one deserves to.
It's like everyone wants to bully her because you just want to bully her because she's so pathetic at times.
But it's so tragic, because she really got a good heart. and to have it. And to have the writers eviscerate the character like that, they macerated her. Jesse? Jesse, don't throw up on us, please. But she's eviscerated. I mean, it's so unfortunate.
It really is, because she could have been an amazing
I think a normal
character.
person, they found themselves in that circumstance, and they realize that everything that they said actually makes people very suspicious of you.
Right.
I think a normal person is like, okay, I'm going to shut up now.
See, I don't think she would need to. I think she would just know that going into it. I mean, she's David's governess, for God's sake. You would think that she would know from the get-go, as soon as she realized she was in another time, that she shouldn't say anything, because
Daniel and
the
Sarah
Crucible.
I know. I'd be doing a lot of what the fuck if I was her.
But I mean,
another thing is she shows up. She shows up in 1795 wearing up to a knee
risque
tweed.
For then.
But a tweed outfit, and they consider that risque. If anyone considers tweed risque, you're in dangerous territory.
But it makes for some good lines between him and Abigail, which I really thought was funny, because when he's telling Abigail about all this, and Abigail is saying, she told you that people can fly, and he says, yes, do you want to fly too? And she says, I will only fly if angels attach my wings to that kind of thing. That Sam Hall wrote that episode. That sounds just like Sam Hall, because he had that sarcastic kind of.
I think Abigail probably could fly if she had a broom.
Yeah, she does have a similar quality to Miss Gulch from The Wizard of Oz.
Well,
that's a very good analogy.
Good analogy. Yes. Well, but she died like fearfully looking, and she's not looking too.
I love her when they found her body. Look in her face. That was fantastic.
Listen,
that woman did not blink, and they kept the camera on her for a while.
She didn't.
Clarice Blackburn did a hell of a job in that role. You can't fault her for anything. Her lines were perfect on the spot.
Oh, she did a fantastic job. She'd be a good pick for a favorite character too, because as much as you hate her being the puritanical biatch, she doesn't.
The only thing I can fault with her block is that there should have been more of her.
Yes.
Maybe
they started that out,
and then she would appear.
Yeah, that was kind of obnoxious.
Daniel. They never used David Hennessy in that block.
No, they did
never used him. It was terrible.
They underutilized some people that they could have gotten some really good mileage. Abigail, Daniel. They could have
killed them off too.
Yeah, because I remember
back in the day. Was there any feedback?
No, they did it in 13. And they were just going from ratings block to ratings block, just hoping for the best. Sort of thing.
And then going.
I remember when I was watching later on, I did feel like it felt like we were working with a very empty room. You know, like how you go to work in the morning and there's not very many people there and kind of waiting for everyone to come in. I felt like we were just working with like Nathan Forbes and then Trask's character, and then you bring on Suki, but it's like, why don't you utilize the people you already have and like have them do stuff?
Well, just you have to remember the budget also.
Thing. Yeah.
But I also think though there's a problem with I love this. At the end of the day, this is the best of Dark Shadows. But I do think that they weren't letting things breathe. They were running too fast with it. And I think that they probably could have slowed down slightly and still kept it interesting where it's not boring at all. Because they had so many different components. But because they were running at such a pace that I think that people got left off. Like they were falling off of the wayside sort of thing. It's like when Josette dies during this thingy. She dies, it's like she's dead. But anyway, going forward, it's like we got that with all the deaths so far.
Now we go to the trial.
And you got Nathan Forbes. He has a big part in all this. Nathan Forbes does. I mean.
And Joe Cravers.
Yeah, but even his transformation from Mr. Good Guy, womanizer good guy, because he wasn't really the cad sort of thing, and then we if you look at the projection. But we get the projection of him, and what we got so far, the projection is like, he starts off and it's like he's not that bad. He's a bit of a cat, he's a bit of a womanizer, but he's not a bad person.
And then
he goes like Millicent, and then it's like okay, then he had this kind of thing like does he really feel that way for her? But obviously he actually likes her a lot more than what we think he does. And then he turns. And there's no reason for that turn.
You know
what I mean?
You know what that's like? It's like Hans from Frozen.
That's why he turned.
And and again, there's this little scintilla that's left in him of honesty, which is kind of like during the block, he's literally turning into such a rat. But even when he lies about Vicky, and claims that he thought that she bewitched him and everything, he still feels very guilty about that. That Trask literally talked him into it, and then he didn't have enough guts to stand up more. But the transformation is very. It looks like what the writers really are doing is they're trying to make the fans forget about all the good that this character ever had in him and just turn him into a real rat. And that's what happens.
And when a person changes psychologically, what happens is normally a series of events that changes that person. Mm-hmm. And they could have done that very easily, like built this. Yeah. So therefore, and you can see them turning to this dark side. But it's almost like he's here and then boof.
Are they
not really? I mean, the thing is, okay, his, what's basically happened to him. Okay, his position may be at risk because of what Joshua might make him lose his position in the what is he, a colonel?
The lieutenant in the Navy,
lieutenant
working at the shipyards.
Yeah, so he could lose his positioning. But then at another time, you kind of think to yourself like, well, at the same time, how much pull does the Collins family had with the U.S. Navy?
Right.
Getting blackmailed by the other guy at this time, the sailor. Remember?
By Trask.
Not yet.
No, that was the Harry Johnson character. I don't remember what his name was.
Oh, no, that's later. No, that's in the next block.
That's later. Okay, I got ahead of myself.
That's later.
But even like Mitsuki's death, it's almost like she didn't even exist.
I know.
Well, that was one thing that Joshua points out. Joshua says, "I'm very suspicious of you because this was your sister." Then of course he finds out she's wife. But he's not broken up over it. And
but did they even know that she's dead? Did they found her body?
Yeah, he found her body. Forbes found her body.
Okay,
Forbes found because he was supposed to meet her in the old house. In the meantime, Barnabas does his little strangling act.
There he goes, not getting a snack. He's strangled.
And right out of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, by the way, you see the bat. The bat goes into the camera, and then Frid appears with the cape, and that's just out of Lugosi with the special effect that they did in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, if you remember.
I love that movie.
That kind of thing. It was. I mean, that you can talk about.
But did you find it funny that Suki's there for what? 5 minutes.
5 episodes.
And
4 episodes.
She puts everything together on that. She's got it all together. She knows everything.
She's going to come back she's going to come back in one more episode. And I'm not going to say when, but you're going to see her come back in one more episode. So
I forget because, like I said,
I'm not going to say.
She pretty much tells Nathan all about Barnabas. It's like Barnabas is this. It's like she had it all put together. It's like God. This woman knows to get around.
I want to mention a very interesting thing in episode 427, and this is the only time they ever did this. After the intro voiceover, then they have Abigail looking at the camera and going into more of an exposition after the opening voiceover, and the same thing with Trask. And they talk about the fact that Vicky is going to be in the trial now and so forth. So they're really expounding on the opening voiceover, and it's like in a black studio. It's like in a black screen. And that's the only time you ever see that they've ever done that. And I think it seems to me like they were experimenting with that.
They might have done.
Yeah, and I thought that was very interesting. And I thought actually it added to it. Where you actually have the camera, you have the characters speaking to the audience. First time that instead of speaking to each other, first time that and the last time that ever happened. In terms of, and that's the first day of the trial. Very interesting technique.
They should have done that more.
They should have. They should have absolutely. But all in all. Let's see, what other...
I do think we need to mention about once Vicky goes to trial and the stroke of genius where she tells everyone the truth, which actually creates, she's going to be hung by the neck until dead. Barnabas gets it into his head that he's going to gain revenge on Trask. I mean, hello, this makes Vicky look even more guilty.
Yeah.
Well, but again, he's not thinking with his brain. He's thinking with he's full of rage. He's full of rage. And at one point, after Josette committed suicide, and he's talking to Ben about it, he almost gets like Lugosi. I want blood. I'm going to destroy everything. I'm going to kill everyone. That kind of thing. That's the closest he comes to the traditional Dracula that I have ever seen the Barnabas character come. And it doesn't look pretty. It really doesn't, because once again, and then thank God the writers woke up and he goes back to his sympathetic vampire thing and how horrible he feels about what was doing it, what he's done, and how guilty he feels, and blah blah blah. And you all want to sympathize with him, even though he's simply, well, you're right, Keith. He's locked into the same merry-go-round, and he's going to do the same thing over and over.
Better than his dirty old man days, where they give him those stupid eyebrows going up. And
what are you talking? Did you see mascara? Did you see the purple mascara running down his face with the eyeliner? I mean, they did that on him one episode. My God, he looked like a $2 whore.
Yeah,
he has some interesting makeup choices during this.
Yeah. But those eyebrows they gave him there, it's just like, what the hell are they doing?
Well, what always kind of shocks me as well is that in your mind's eye, Joe Crothers, you have this. He's quite a nice looking guy in black and white, but in color, he's not so good looking.
No.
You know what I mean? It's like in black and white, there's something about him, and then when you see him in color, it kind of like throws you a little bit. It's like, oh,
yeah.
Then another episode, Fred has got brown eye makeup. And that. I mean, you see this now finally when you're looking at a big screen. I mean, you can't see this on regular TV. But you're right. Some of the makeup choices.
Barnabas had more makeup on than any of the women on the show.
No, that's true. That's true.
He has so much cake makeup.
Always too much red on it.
Yeah, but he's got a heavy base. But I also think that's because when they do a close up on him, and because things are HD and now you kind of see things a bit more clearly. I think he had bad acne, so I think that's the reason why.
Yeah,
I think he had acne scars.
Oh wow!
So.
Oh wow!
Joe Crothers?
You can tell.
No, well, Joe, he did as well.
Because he has lots of them.
Well, Jonathan Fred did as well because.
Well, if anybody, what happened?
Next time you see a close up of him, they got pancake makeup on him, which is like heavy stage makeup. You can see where he had some.
Well, if anybody had acne, it was Craig Slocum, who played Noah Gifford in the last episode. You can see.
Yeah, he does too.
He was pockmarked.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was the guy's name.
It is before Oxy though, so.
Maybe Clearasil was around back then.
Clearasil,
that was.
I think Clearasil in those days was made from acid anyway. It's like,
they all still burn. Yeah.
God.
Clearasil.
Get old Noxzema.
Yeah.
So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to discuss our favorite character and our least favorite character from this block. And starting with Vicky, who's your favorite character and who's your least favorite character from this block?
Like I said earlier, I like Nancy Barrett because I like that she finally can break out of her, daughter Caroline, and do something different because she's kind of a little bad. She's a little bit of a whiny baby in the beginning when you first see the black and whites, and then she starts, evolving to a rebellious teenager. And then she starts, trying to take the reins and take more responsibility. And then she just changes from that into this other character who's really a kind of I guess I hate to use the word ditzy blonde kind of thing, but that's what they're trying to portray her as.
Yeah.
But she's very simple-minded and not so strong, and she needs lots of protection. And I just think that it's a total, polar opposite than what she normally is, because Nancy Barrett's character as Carolyn, she's kind of smart. You know, she's a little more sharper, but she's not. She's like a victim almost in this, but she's a really nice person. And I don't really know. As far, I guess Barnabas, I hate to say it's Jonathan Frid, gets on my nerves. This whole group of episodes. I don't know why. I mean, it's not his fault. It's his writing.
It's because he's not doing any of the right things.
Yeah, I mean, his character's making mistakes, and honestly,
he's a stalker. He's stalking people.
You know, and you're
well,
just
the thing is, he's not
causing people to die.
What are they thinking? Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not Jonathan Frid's fault, of course.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, I think Barnabas, if you're going to play hide and seek, he'd be the worst person to play hide and seek with because you'd be able to find him.
Casket here, a casket there, you know, a body here, a body there. Everybody disappears in that mausoleum. People die in that mausoleum. Bodies never come back. I mean, everything happens in that mausoleum. No one's supposed to know about the mausoleum.
But everybody knows about it.
But I mean, as much as I love Jonathan's Barnabas, he just annoyed me through this, and it's not any reflection on him. It's not his fault. It was the writing.
And what about yourself, Jess? Who's your favorite and least favorite character of this block?
That's really hard to answer, but
he has so many.
And then there's certain moments where you like what a certain character has done. Like I love when Barnabas walls up Trask.
Yeah,
but I also
fun.
don't like
that's
it.
Later.
That's
later.
That's later.
That's later.
My bad.
That's next month.
Yeah. Okay.
Shh! You didn't hear that, guys.
Oh, everybody knows anyway.
Well, the oldies, the new ones are.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't know. I mean, it was nice to see.
Jeff, did anybody annoy you? The writing for a particular character, maybe?
I mean, I was kind of annoyed with the whole hand series, like where Trask kept seeing Barnabas's ring finger, ring hand, just like out of nowhere with the what do you call that that method?
Chroma key.
Yeah, that where they were using the chroma key hand. It was very obnoxious. I'm like, oh my god, when is this gonna just end? Just do something with him already.
Yes, it was the 60s.
I know. Well, also, it was like one of those storylines where they were just really drawing it out. And it's like, okay, just stop doing this already because there's better storylines and better characters to work with. I did like Naomi, even though she doesn't really do much. I always want to see more of Joan
Bennett.
Bennett.
Lot going on.
I know.
There were a few.
I
good
really
scenes with
wish.
her. There were a few good scenes with her.
She has.
She looked pretty pleased when Abigail was dead. Yay!
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Everyone except Joshua was thrilled.
It's like, oh, she's dead. Sorry, Joshua. And then she kind of looks at the camera and smirks. What a shame.
I might say my least favorite might be Nathan Forbes. I mean, I know he's supposed to be the villain, but I just don't like the character Nathan right now at all. And the character, his turn doesn't make any sense, really. I mean, as drastic of a turn as it was, I mean, those motivating factors that they could have been, they weren't used in any dialogue or any motivations, or they didn't. I don't know how to explain it. It didn't work for some reason. So I don't really like the way that they made him turn so drastically with the very little reasons that he could have turned. There wasn't enough reason there. So it didn't make a ton of sense to me. It's just kind of baffling.
What about yourself, Tom? Favorite and least favorite?
I'm going to start out with the least favorite because that's easier for me than the most favorite. The least favorite to me was a toss-up between David Hennessy, only because they didn't give him anything to do. And they were just really, to me, in the 2 episodes he appeared in, they were trying to make him a watered-down version of David. And it just fell short of the mark, although there were a couple of interesting scenes with him and Abigail, as I said before, and with him and Trask. And the other one that's in the tie-up with Vala Clifton. Vala Clifton played Maud Browning, the second Doxy, who appears in the last episode and will last for 2 more episodes. And interestingly enough, she was the only one that had the only extra that was given an intro voiceover on the entire show.
That's true.
Yeah. She must have had an in with somebody to get that. But she was actually did the voiceovers in 2 of the 3 appearances she made. But she essentially was, she was a very average actress. I don't think that she, really contributed very much. And had this scene with Ben Stokes in the bar, you would have thought Ben was James Bond, the way he.
Oh yeah, that's right.
The way he was, he goes, Morty, I'll tell you about Mr. Barnabas. That all that nonsense. And she's got that heart, a perfect heart on her right cheek, I think it was. I mean, come on.
Did they actually do
that?
They
used to do that back in the 1700s all the time.
We talked about that. Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, they did.
Where they went from one to the other or something. I didn't even.
If you ever watch any Louis the 16th kind of things or Three Musketeers kind of things, you'll see that the dandies kind of had them on their face, or they were all powdered, and they would always wear it's really obnoxious. I have to admit, I would have bitch slapped a lot of French back in the 1700s.
Anyway,
it reminds me of what they did with Barbossa and Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, I know.
I didn't even see that. I didn't see that. I gotta catch that one of those years.
Don't.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'll remember. So it's a toss-up for the worst actors. It's a toss-up between those 2. And again, only because Hennessy wasn't given anything to do. He's such a marvelous child actor. But it's the writer's fault. Best is harder. And I would I want to give Roger Davis honorable mention, because as the Romeo is the complete good guy type character. He puts a lot of effort into the role. A couple of voice bloopers on his part, but basically his performance is a lot better than a lot of the other things I've seen, and he really knew his lines well.
Oh, he was on top of his game, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the best probably. Well, it's going to be between Abigail and Trask to me, and she went out when the character of Abigail went out with a bang, but to the end she was absolutely great, and maybe the 2 of them played off on each other, because remember, Abigail and Trask were partners in crime. But Jerry Lacey once again comes through with the evil. He really engages you in the trial because he's such a bastard. I mean, he really is. He's pulling every dirty trick in the book to try. He's every other question is a leading question. As a witch, you did this, didn't you?
Not really a man of God, is he?
He's a man of something, but I don't think God had any. God was out for a beer when that thing happened. But yeah, no, he's a man. He's a man unto himself, essentially, and he's more of a devil than anybody he accuses of being a devil of. And he's
true.
And again, he puts the liar into the lawyer. I mean, he doesn't give that profession a good reputation. I mean, every trick in the book, and it's up to the judges to catch him. It's really some good writing there, and it's a good counterpoint with Davis, because Davis is the guy is steady Eddie, and he's trying to keep everything straight, and he's really, and he's trying to catch him at it, and he did the best he could. Unfortunately, Angelique walked in and spoiled everything, and nobody could blame them for that. But between Jerry Lacey as Trask and Clarice Blackburn as Abigail, those are the 2 best for me.
My 2 favorite is actually, my 1 favorite is Reverend Trask. I just love someone that as soon as you see them, you hate them, and he just burns you up, and you get that strong feeling about him.
Yeah.
And, I do think that some of the way that the writing of the story played out. I would have liked a lot more of the double team, the witch hunt that was going on against Victoria, and a lot more of that, seeing some more scenes in that. So it would have been good to see a lot more of the strong dynamics there, but yeah, I think he's fantastic. I have to give it him. My weakest character is Victoria Winters, because you just want to shake her, and I mean, you just want to bully her. I'm sorry, but she
the writing was terrible for her.
Yeah, and I think that I just kind of wish at some point that she would just, that her character would just be clued up on something, but she just seems to be clueless. And I think that she's lived in this time period for, I guess we're looking at months now. I guess a long period of time.
Yeah,
I don't know,
couple months.
Here, but I know it's been quite a few nights that she's been there. We haven't seen very many days there, but quite a few nights.
Never do on Dark Shadows. Never do.
Yeah.
No, you don't. There's always a thunderstorm.
Always a thunderstorm. Never a Christmas. Never a holiday. No one.
There's more thunderstorms and Dark Shadows than in the Addams Family, which is where you'd think you would see that the most.
Or the Munsters.
That too.
It just hit me, by the way, that this is the lawyer for the state, and this lawyer for the state tried to burn the defendant to a tree. And I'm saying, how ridiculous?
What the hell was that all about?
How ridiculous!
I know. It's like some weird kind of magic.
It was a test for which, in other words, if the tree was destroyed, then she was a witch.
Destroyed.
But I don't know. I mean, the Constitution was in its infancy at this point.
I don't think I don't think it came out of the womb.
But at the same time, you do kind of wonder, like, aren't you like innocent until proven guilty by this point in the American judicial system?
Right.
Well,
and I had to sit there and say that. And then you kind of wonders, like, well, why didn't Peter Bradford bring this up? Like, you actually were torturing the,
I think he did. I think it was brought to.
Does he bring it up?
Yeah, he did bring it up. But the whole point of him being appointed to be an attorney for the state, and here he tied the woman to a tree.
It seems like a bit of a budgetary thing. Oh, we'll get
battery to
we
me.
Can't afford another actor.
I mean,
we can't introduce another actor. We got quite a few actors running around the stage as it is.
I mean, but everybody ignored it. Everybody ignored the reality because they were so engrossed in the character portrayal and the way that Jerry Lacey was able to. It was almost like magnetism. People were magnetized.
Well, this was 1968 that this was.
1967.
And if you look at, we would get the Witchfinders General.
Vincent Price.
A year later.
Yeah.
And Matthew Hopkins, when the true story of him is that when he's going around getting money to convict women of being witches and to kill them. They would go to court. He would actually be the person. He would actually play the prosecutor in real life. So I think it's probably maybe a nod to that character. I imagine with Trask.
Interesting.
Sort of thing. So maybe that's what it is. So now we come to the part where we discuss our overall views of Dark Shadows this block. And starting with you, Tom, what's your overall view of these episodes 419 to 439?
Of the three plots I mentioned, which were Josette's death, the trial, and Nathan and Millicent, the trial was the strongest. The trial was riveting. You did not know what was going to happen. At one point, you almost thought she was going to get off. When Ben came and testified to everything, but then Angelique spoiled and then of course Lieutenant. That was another twist. Lieutenant Forbes was originally going to testify for Vicky, and he was double. He turned on her, and nobody knew it until he walked into the courtroom and said he was going to be a witness for Trask. So there were some nice twists in the trial. The judges act like the usual kind of nonsense, and I just really liked Leslie Barrett as the head judge, knowing him as the little wimp. He was a very good actor. Knowing him as the little wimp, George on the Honeymooners, the little guy, and then there's George and saying, and now we must follow this exactly. It was so different. He had such a range to him. So I think that was also, he was a very consummate actor. So I think the acting helped that trial as well, and everybody was able to emote to the fullest. And and it was. I wonder what Perry Mason would have done in a case like that, in a situation like that. He would have thrown up his hands and walked out of the courtroom. But I think ran with Della Street to the nearest bar. So I think that this thing with Nathan and Millicent, I think it was an unnecessary. It's not Dark Shadows. It's more of a regular soap opera. The guy's going to be a bigamist, and I
was wondering. Really, they could have probably skipped this little, segment.
Yeah,
I don't really
agree.
see where it fits into the scheme.
I think
of this, other than setting up.
But I think it's almost like they had to make sure that Nathan has some kind of storyline with the McCollins family, so it does feel like it is wedged in there.
It's wasted. No, it's so unnecessary.
They could have done something else.
So unnecessary.
Exactly.
They could have done a lot. They could have done something else. They really could have.
They could have done anything. He could have been, helping investigate, like, what happened to these women? Where are these people getting killed? Kind of thing. He could have done something like that, as opposed to, being a bigamist and. Just something.
But they wanted to keep him evil.
He just sucks at
being
dick. Yeah. He just does. He's a much better nice guy. He just doesn't do the bad guy well. I guess maybe because he's been, grilled into that,
I had something to say. When he puts on he has a good evil face, though. I'll give him that. When he puts his evil face on, he's got a good looking evil face.
And look, you're too used to him as Joe Haskell.
Yeah, that's all I've seen of him for how many episodes, too. Though.
Exactly.
I bet you him as an actor, though. I bet he's like, thank God.
He loved it. I heard he loved it. He really, because he was one of the few that really.
I'm sure he gets sick of playing goody two shoes all the time. Like Alexander Mulkey wanted to be a vampire.
Exactly.
Or something a little more decadent,
Yeah, exactly. So he was one of the few that had a chance to change to have his character change, and he loved the role. The same thing with Nancy Barrett. I heard this, or I read this somewhere, that Nancy Barrett loved the idea of being a vampire in the movie, in the House of Dark Shadow, because she was pretty good
at it too.
She was she loved it.
She was vicious.
Because it was a change for her from the Carolyn and and all the rest of them, which were never anything really evil. So she had a chance there in the movie, as it turned out, and that really was well. So and Josette's death, which had to be done. It was a denouement. It was fine. It came off, and now that particular segment of the 1795 story is closed, and so now we move on to the others. All in all, it was a pretty good block. I liked it.
It was.
Keith,
what are you, Jesse? What are your thoughts of this block?
Yeah, I have to agree with what everyone else is saying too, because when I was watching Nathan Forbes, I was thinking, like, at some parts he does it really good, but then other parts are kind of like, oh, this just is kind of weak. It falls a little flat. So I do think he has strong moments, but I also think he has he has some weak moments in there too. I don't know if it's a balanced act of both, but so there was that, and then I did think the Trask and Nathan Forbes team up was a little drawn out. It wasn't my favorite. And then when you see Daniel, it is kind of like, oh, hey there, where have you been this whole time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to see him more, just because
I'm wondering if he'd had to take a break or something.
Yeah, maybe it had to do with school or something. Like, did this kid go to school in real life at some point?
They were tutored on the set.
Okay, yeah.
So, but maybe it was, I don't know, what it was, but it just seemed to me that, my feeling, that's something they should have asked him that at the Halloween Fest. And I do want to mention that, by the way, for the fans that didn't attend the Halloween Festival that was given, that's on YouTube. And you guys should look for it. It was wonderful to see the cast members together again. And I think as of a week ago or a week and a half ago, over 20,000 viewers had seen it on YouTube, which is stupendous, because at the conventions you never had more than 1,100 people for a convention. So this was, and they're going to do more, from what I understand. So you see, so you definitely see a lot. I also do want to mention, by the way, before we, and I know this is a question when we're talking about the block. 2 days ago, Malcolm Marmerstein, one of the big writers of Dark Shadows, passed away at age 92. And may rest in peace. And he was seminal, along with all the rest of them, in developing the Barnabas character. And whatever issues may have gone on, because Ron Spurt was claiming credit, he was claiming credit, and Curtis had his own issue and his own feelings about it. But the bottom line is that Malcolm Marmerstein did have a role in the creation of that character, whatever that role was. And so he will be missed.
And Vicky, what's
I'm
your
to the
overall
opinion.
thoughts?
I'm to the opinion with everybody else. I liked it. I think this is I guess we're tying up all the loose ends, aren't we? In these episodes, and I don't know if we were actually really tied up some of the loose ends. I guess we did the biggies, like with the Legend of Josette and Widow's Hill, and Millicent. We all knew that there was a Millicent.
Haphazardly.
Jonathan gave all of their. Remember, they did the costume party. This would have fit you. These perfect clothes that came out of the trunk that are 200 years old. But it was kind of nice seeing some of them step outside of their other character, and I guess being their polar opposite pretty much in these episodes. Lacey himself, though, Lacey's actually very good. He's kind of hardcore Humphrey Bogart kind of guy, anyway. And to see him doing Reverend Trask, he, it was just excellent. I mean, I love to hate him, So, but anyway, I really enjoyed these last few episodes, and it's time to move forward and see what the future brings for our heroes and heroines.
And there's a lot of good stuff ahead, guys. A lot of good stuff.
And it's for myself. I think this is a strong block. I do think that they're running at race neck speed, and it would probably
it was kind of rushed.
And I have to sit there and say that I think this is one of my problems with Dark Shadows overall. They're going too slow or too fast, and I like it if they every once in a while, and this might also have a simple fact that now that we have streaming and there's other ways of watching this than it did in the day.
Right.
We can actually watch one after the other, sort of thing. So it's moving at breathneck speed, and sometimes I feel that it'd be nice if they just took a breath, recollect themselves, mourn some of the people who've died, and develop, and maybe have a couple more scenes here and there. But I do understand that this might be more of looking at things due to the way that we now view things.
It was a different time and a different world.
It was indeed.
Instead of waiting watching it each single day. But I can just only imagine that if I was watching this 30 minutes a day, Monday through Friday, and I had to rush home to get it, I do think that if you missed an episode during this block, you probably were pretty messed. You probably were messed up. Oh my God, I probably missed such huge chunks.
That's exactly what happened. And the really bright people stayed with it. But people who just were watching it, out of a passive interest, you missed a lot. If you, and I remember when I was a kid and my parents took me up to the country, I was so mad in upstate New York because they didn't have TV. The TV signals were very poor.
Where in upstate New York, I have to ask?
Cohasset, Ellenville, the Catskills.
And you wouldn't have got a signal there.
That wouldn't, yeah, all the Jewish places, Grossingers
And were you baby? Did they put you in the corner?
You might say that, because I was with the older
dancing
people.
up there, Tom.
I was with the people playing shuffleboard. I learned a lot from that. But I was so mad. There was one summer. That's why it's so great to be able to actually to finally view, and I viewed them. This is the third time. But when they were originally on, there was a month at one point that I couldn't see anything, and I was bereft. And I mean, all this stuff is happening, and I had to catch up after I came back. I don't know how, but I did. I had a cousin actually who wanted me to pay him for
watch it.
Yeah, and my aunt put the kibosh on that. Thank you very much. But yes, he wanted me. Yeah, my cousin wanted me to pay him if I let. Yeah, because I was desperate. I said, I need to know what's happening. He says, I'll tell you, $10.
And this is before VCRs and video recorders.
That's right.
That's right. Stuff. You had to watch it live, and there's, it is surprising that this show actually has survived, considering that.
Oh God, yeah.
Most of these tapes have been rubbed. Soap operas are pretty much rubbed out, sort of thing. That there's time period. So I would just sit there and say, it's a minor criticism, but it would have been nice to been able to mourn Josette a little bit, be able to
that was quick, wasn't it?
And mourn Sarah's death in the previous
I
block.
know. Sarah and Josette were the pivotal
and Suki,
ones,
and some reflection of Suki missing, sort of thing.
Or an honorable mention, in the very least. She was a sentient being once upon a time.
I do wonder why they took her out. Maybe because she wasn't, really gelling with the show. I have no idea why they took her out.
She's there for 5 episodes, so they didn't give her a chance, really.
4 episodes.
Or maybe she was just there to die. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes they just bring characters on because they need Barnabas to bite and kill someone without killing their main people.
Main character.
That's what they did with Maud Browning. They brought her on for 3 episodes and killed her off.
Actually, I've learned that's a good way to tell who's going to die in any supernatural show nowadays. If you see a new character suddenly come on or become important, it almost always means they're making this character important because they're going to have some important, big, heavy character kill them off later in the season or episode.
The Star Trek red shirt syndrome.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
So I guess overall, I think it's they're very, very strong. You can't stop watching it. You want to devour as much as possible during this block. But as far as a good storytelling, I do think that sometimes people get some of their storylines probably could have been more developed. You want to kind of see more. So I guess in one good way, it does leave you wanting more, but at the same time, it's when they're gone, it moves at such a pace that you forget that they were even there.
If you think it's breakneck speed now, wait till a year from now, and then you're gonna, and then this will be a cakewalk compared to what's going to happen.
Well, yeah, I know. Once we get to
a third, they give them an honorable mention with some music when they kill them off. Like da 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 da, that music.
Oh.
Well, I do know that when we are going to have a curse coming on that seems to.
Please don't.
I'm not thinking of that one. I'm thinking of.
I know exactly what you're talking
about. Even further down the line.
Are you talking about something that might have been written by Mary Shelley? That storyline.
I'm talking about later. I'm talking about after that.
I know.
I'm talking about da 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 da.
I mean, we still get some fun characters later on.
Yeah, we do.
There's some good ones that I would love to see join like the regular Rogues Gallery.
Yeah, but saying that, I'm nitpicking here, so
I don't want to say.
There really wasn't a whole lot wrong with this episode. These episodes.
It's just too fast, and I wanted to see some of my favorite characters more. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, especially since this is 1795, like it's such a big, important storyline that really brings together the Dark Shadows mythos. Really, I mean, it's an origin story for a lot of the earlier Collins before the 1960s family. So I feel like you kind of have to not mess this up because this really sets the rest of the show up and helps you understand more of like why everyone is so fascinated with the Collinsport history and stuff like that.
I don't know if you guys are,
I suppose Collinwood history.
Well, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but and I don't want to say too much, but this is not, once we get out of 1795, this is not the end of it. They're going to go back. Well, I'm not going to say any more. That's why your fans have to keep in touch. We have to let them know what's going on. But they're going to go back. And we're going to go back. They are.
So this brings us to the end of the Literary License Podcast, Dark Shadows, episodes 419 to 439. Next month, we'll be covering episodes 440 to 460, which plus we'll be celebrating Christmas, and it'll be our Christmas month. Our next episode for the Literary License Podcast is A Christmas Carol, and we'll be having one of our Dark Shadows interviewees with us, Mary O'Leary joining us, and John Collado will be with us as well. And of course, our 2-for-1 for Christmas will be Toxic Avenger the musical and Anna and the Apocalypse, and we will be having the cast and crew joining us for a special episode for that for December. We have a lot more surprises installed for you for the month of December. Make sure you join us to our website at www.llpodcast.com and subscribe to our newsletter, and you too could win a hoodie. All this and more from the Literary License Podcast. So it's good night for myself. Hey, Vicky.
Good night, everybody. Take care. Have a great holiday season.
Good night, Jesse.
Have a good night, folks.
Good night, Tom.
Good night, everybody. Stay safe. And once again, a great holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and all the rest.
And we'll be seeing you next week with A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens.
Been a Literary License Podcast production. Till next time, and don't forget to comment or share. We so admirably appreciate your support. Now it's back to Mr. Barnabas, Mr. Joshua, and all the goings on at Collinwood. And remember the witch!